All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Pam Bowles from the North Mason Chamber.
Here we go.
I'm so pleased to partner with Heidi to bring forth this legislative update. Go ahead, Heidi.
I'm Heidi McKitchen of the Shelton-Mason County Chamber of Commerce. We are honored to be joined today by Senator Tim Shelton, Representatives Drew McEwen and Dan Griffey. And first up, we will actually have the pleasure to hear from Drew McEwen.
So it's my pleasure to introduce Representative Drew McEwen. Representative Drew McEwen was first elected to the House in 2012 and quickly emerged as a leader on issues including tax reform and education funding reform. Drew has brought a bold agenda to the legislature, rooted in his experience as both a business and civic leader in his community. Representative McEwen has been named to 2 budget committees at the House of Representatives and will serve as the deputy budget writer for the House Republicans as an assistant ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee. He is also the ranking member of the Commerce and Gaming Committee and serves as co-chair of the Joint Veteran and Military Affairs Committee. And he is also a caucus leader as a deputy floor leader. Drew served in the United States Navy for 6 years, serving in the submarine force. Drew graduated from the Navy's nuclear propulsion program and was stationed at the naval base in Kitsap, where he developed a strong bond with Western Washington. He went on to complete his undergraduate studies at the State University of New York, earning a Bachelor of Science degree. It's easy to say. Welcome, Drew.
Thank you very much. I like the Bachelor of Science degree. I'll take that. But no, thank you. No problem. Thank you, everybody from the Chamber for having me here today, and along with Representative Griffey and Senator Sheldon. It's always a pleasure to provide an update. We are today at the what's called the fiscal committee cutoff. So all bills with a fiscal note have to pass out of committee today in their House of Origin in order to continue to advance in the legislative process. Our policy cutoff was a week ago. So we're at even though we're not technically halfway through the session, this kind of is like a halfway mark because a lot of things go away after today. So I'm actually in the middle of an appropriations committee meeting right now. We'll be going all day until we have all of our bills passed, and then we'll be on the House floor for the next 2 weeks, passing off House bills and then sending those over to the Senate, and then we'll start the whole process over as we receive Senate bills, and we'll go back to committee work for a few weeks to hear all the Senate stuff, and then come to a final conclusion in April, and hopefully on time. So it's been an interesting session, as it has been an interesting, continues to be an interesting 12 plus months for everybody else in their respective businesses, dealing with the COVID pandemic, et cetera. We, as I'm sure you probably know, we're conducting session virtually. We do have a few of us that do work from the Capitol. There's things that just you cannot do without being there, but that's a handful of us. I'm there from time to time. I also do some of the session from my office in Union, so I kind of rotate between the 2 places. And it certainly has been a scaled down version of a typical long session, just because the process is even more slow because of the way we vote. It takes not quite double the time, but it takes close to that much more time to pass any given bill off the House floor because of the nuances with doing it virtually. So give you a perspective of the amount of legislation at this point in the session. 2 years ago, when we were in the last long session, there was roughly 1,800 bills in the House. Where we're at today, we have 800. So a substantial 1,000.
Looks like we may have lost him. Unfortunately, we're having some technical difficulties. So while we wait for him to come back around, we will be able to hear from Senator Tim Sheldon. Senator Sheldon is a 35th District native and the longest serving member of the legislature. He served 7 years in the House of Representatives, including 2 years as Deputy Majority Leader before being elected to the Senate in 1997. He has authored major job training, infrastructure, job creation, and sex offender community notification legislation. And he's committed to all of his constituents, regardless of political affiliation. Tim earned his BS in economics from Wharton School of Finance and Commerce and at the University of Pennsylvania. He also went on to receive his MBA in business administration from UW, Go Dogs. And he worked as the manager for the Potlatch Beach Mutual Water Company and also served in economic development for the Northwest Indian Tribes. He was the executive director of the Economic Development Council in Mason County and also served as a Mason County Commissioner. He is currently a general partner for Sheldon Properties. So with that, Senator Sheldon.
Well, thanks very much. I'm sorry we lost Drew. He was just talking about the slow pace of the legislature, and of course that's happening both in the House and the Senate. We have heard about half the bills that we would normally hear, and that's not a bad thing, really. It's kind of makes the legislature prioritize. And I serve on the Environment, Technology, and Telecommunications Committee, as well as the Transportation Committee. So Transportation Committee will be meeting today. We probably got 1 or 2 more days before all the policy bills from those fiscal committees come out. So it's been a challenge for me. I'm not the computer whiz like many of you. You know, you get over 60 or 65. I'm certainly over 65. So my skills aren't as good, and I fumble along. I think that one of the difficulties of this session, though, and one of the pitfalls is a committee. First of all, the majority party, the Democrats have majority control in both houses of the legislature, and the Republicans seem to say, "Well, why are we going so slow, so tied up? I mean, the public can't weigh in on these bills." But really, what's happening is majority party says, "Oh no, you have all the opportunity to weigh in on particular bills. Don't worry, it's all on the internet. Anyone can come in. It's much easier than driving from Eastern Washington." Well, trouble is the committee chair can pick and choose which people testify for particular bills. And if you're in opposition, you might not get a bill or get a say on the bill if the committee chair is deciding who is testifying. So that makes it very difficult. And so as we look farther on down the session, I think it's going to be pretty one-sided. Those 2 committees are the ones I serve on. And I get the feeling that the majority party will bring up their big ideas. And, you know, the big ideas, you know what they are. They're the capital gains tax, which they've now called a tax on high earners. You know, they always want to avoid that word income tax. That will be, I think, up in the Ways and Means Committee probably this week and then on to the floor. There's a couple other very scary bills. Every bill seems to have something to do with diversity or social justice. That's the byword. So while we all are struggle through all the things that are happening in our world, it would be amazing to me to have unelected boards deciding what the legislature should decide. And I think that's where we're headed with some of these bills, that the legislature would step aside. You know, you as business people are always concerned about rulemaking, but what if you have a different board that's made up of gubernatorial appointees deciding if your permit to expand your business or to locate your business is decided by people that the governor appointed? So I'm very disappointed in the legislature and the way that it's turned right now. The only thing that gets you out of a recession or bad times is the business community starting to hire again and starting to invest again. So I'm very worried that our session this time will be a disappointment for the business community. I know you're all concerned about your employment security taxes. That's something that I think will go up dramatically. many things what the legislature will do is they will not implement them immediately, but in another year or 2 years, then those things will kick in. And that's again, a hurdle we're going to have to overcome. So I sure welcome your questions. And Heidi, is Dan here with us today too?
Yeah, Dan is with us. We'll have him up later in the program. Senator, can you comment a little bit on some of the projects and sponsored bills that you're working on right now?
Well, I'm working. I did not. I purposely did not prime sponsor a bill this year, but I think we should really concentrate on COVID. I mean, that's the one thing that's holding the biggest thing is holding back business, and our communities are certainly worried about it. So that's the biggest issue I think that we have to deal with in the legislature, and we haven't really put our arms around that yet. But I'm working on in the transportation budget. Last year we had a proviso that did away with the latecomers agreement that the Washington State Patrol has on the water and sewer projects. So I've got some language working with the city of Shelton that is will be will be inserted in the Senate transportation budget. And I've worked closely with Drew and Dan on language that would be similar in the House. And hopefully we can get that through and do away with that latecomers agreement, because it's totally unfair to the business community out there, and it's holding back development. So that's one thing I'm working real hard on. And in the Transportation Committee, there is a proposal now. Well, there were 2 proposals. One for a carbon tax that would basically go to social programs around the state. And the other proposal was a carbon tax on transportation that would actually go to, if you're going to tax people, it would actually go to roads, bridges, and highways. And the gas tax, as you know, is protected by the 18th Amendment to the Constitution. And that amendment says that gas taxes can only be used for highway projects, roads, bridges, highways, and ferries. So it looks like the compromise that's come out between the 2 chairs of those 2 committees, and I serve on both of them, the Transportation Committee and the Environment, Energy, and Telecommunications Committee, is a split. You know, it's a compromise. So half the money would go to the social side and half the money would go to the transportation side. So we would, in that proposal, of course, they always want to get something in the budget for you, for your district, if you'll vote for the budget, right? So there's some things that would happen, like the completion of Highway 3 improvements through Belfair, which would be great to have. I would go from Sweetwater Creek on to Highway 106. And of course, more assurances that we will build the bypass, or the SR3 Freight Corridor, as it's known now, on schedule. But it looks to me like those promises are just promises. And, you know, the legislature is great to mandate things in the budget, and then Department of Transportation will somehow, quote unquote, phase them. And phasing a project means shortening it. And that's what we've had done on the Highway 3 improvements through Belfair, because we should have had it all the way to Highway 106 in the first place. So those are kind of the 3 things I'm working on real hard right now. And you know, I'm a Democrat. I was elected 11 times as a Democrat to the legislature. So, but I do sit inside the Republican caucus, because those are the rural people of our state of Washington. They're not the urban people. And what it gets down to in Olympia, and I'll quit here and let somebody else ask questions or talk, is that it's the urbans versus the rurals, and the city mice versus the country mice. And if we stick together, we can make some progress. But in this legislature, it's going to be very difficult. I'm just glad that we only have half the bills that we would normally have, because some of them, like the income tax and other bills, I think will pass this year. Thank you.
if you want to just mention, comment on any trends that are emerging or anticipated outcomes outside of the couple of things that you just talked about.
Well, one thing, you know, I watch the news like you do too. This energy issue in Texas is a terrible situation. And I serve on the board with Energy Northwest, which PUD3, PUD1 belong to, 26 other utilities. Last year I had a bill on adequacy, and that means when you turn on that your light switch at home, is there enough power to go around for the Northwest? So I think there'll be a trend, as you say, Heidi, to look at this issue for the Northwest again. And with the mandates the legislature have passed for renewables, as we get up towards 2025, there is a possibility, a good possibility, that we will be short. We will not be long on electricity in the Northwest. And that's a very big concern of mine. I've got some more language that would go into the budget for Utilities and Transportation Commission to look at this issue, for the Department of Commerce to look at this issue. But we certainly want to be prepared. When you watch the news and see what happens in Texas, that is a major, major disaster. And it's because they didn't plan. It's because some of the firms have taken advantage and rigged the system down in Texas. As you might know, the eastern half of the U.S. and the western half of the U.S. both have interconnections. Texas went alone. They do their own thing, and that's not working out. So that's a big issue, I think, to be concerned about. I'd like to see the Capitol opened up. Right now, we still have the large fence around the Capitol. It's a very inhospitable place. My legislative assistant was in there yesterday. She saw one security person. It's sad that the public cannot use the building yet. I think we should get to the point. The governor, we keep asking the governor to remove the fence, and he says, well, the state patrol has jurisdiction. Well, Governor, you are in charge of the state patrol. Last time I looked, you appoint the chief of the state patrol. Chief Batiste reports directly to you. So why can't the fence come down and we start to be a little more hospitable, at least let people use the grounds and get up close to the building? And so that's an issue that I think we should resolve here pretty soon. It's, the governor even had at a time, I think he still has it, he had actually SWAT members protecting him. I don't think he needs that kind of executive protection. Let's open things up and start to do business. And I guess lastly, we've had bills about emergency powers for the governor. Watch what's happening in New York. Their legislature may change the emergency powers that Governor Cuomo has. I don't think our legislature would do that with the makeup that we have right now, but emergency powers were set up really for disasters like Mount St. Helens. And what's happened in our legislature is when we came back into session, one of the first actions that the Democratic legislature took was to reinforce those emergency powers for the governor. And my opinion, you have three branches of government, and the executive branch cannot walk over the top of the legislative branch. He certainly can't walk over the top of the judicial branch. So those powers should be equal across the board. So that's something I'm still very concerned about.
Rightly so. Well, thank you, Senator, for your comments and for your time this morning. We know that you are very busy, so feel free to stick around if you'd like to hear what Dan and Drew have to say, but regardless, we do appreciate your time.
Stick around for a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you. And Drew, I see you've been able to reboot and get back in, so.
Yeah, my apologies. So I'll be brief since I missed what Senator Sheldon said, and I don't want to double down on the same item. So one item I know he would not have gone over is the House Republican budget that we released last week. So I'll just touch on that real quick. And this is the first time that we've actually released our own budget in over 10 years. And it shows the ability to balance the budget, to provide tax relief, to fund all of our critical needs, and not raise taxes. And you contrast that with Governor Inslee, where every budget proposal he's had has involved tax increases. This is a doable budget. It's not a pie in the sky budget. We do a couple of the highlights that I'd give you are we fund for the first time in state history the working families tax credit. That's been a law for over 12 years, and it's never been funded by the majority party. We fund it in our budget. We have sales tax exemption for basic necessities. That's a huge tax relief to most working families. The basic everyday things in life that are needed would no longer have a sales tax on them. We make significant investments in behavioral health at the local level. We've seen time and again that the best way to address things involving mental health is when they're addressed early, soon, and at the local level, not at Western State or Eastern State Hospital. We provide B&O tax relief to small businesses in this bill, and we achieve a lot of savings by fixing inefficiencies in state government. We have a lot of programs that overlap. We have other programs that have proven ineffective, and we get rid of those. And this is an over $55 billion budget, again, without tax increases. And it just goes to show that you can do it. One, you can do it on time. We released this on February 16th, well before even the halfway mark. We probably will not see the majority party's budget until April, when we're probably within 2 weeks of adjourning. And I think it's not a good way to govern. When you do that, they typically will release the budget on a Monday morning, have an appropriations hearing on it that afternoon. It's over 1,000 pages. Nobody can possibly read the budget and provide meaningful testimony that afternoon. And then it's typically voted off the House floor a couple days later with very little public input. We're being transparent and putting a budget out there that balances, that addresses the most critical needs of our state and our citizens, and gives sufficient time to have daylight shown on it so people can have input on it. And I think this demonstrates a way that you can govern this state and provide for the public to have that meaningful input, and that's very important. So we hope that this, we're obviously we're in the minority. This will not be the budget, but we're hoping that this will help drive that conversation to achieve some of those things that we've put forward. So I'm very proud of that work that we've done and putting that out last week. And then I just want to touch real quickly on a couple of bills that I've been working on that are moving through the process. Some of mine are going to drop off in favor of a Senate bill, but that is relief for the hospitality industry that's been hit very hard through this pandemic, and provides relief for the licensing on the fee structure. That's a costly investment that a lot of businesses have to make, that's due every year. And it also reduces some of the fees on a temporary basis. This has been bipartisan work that's been going on. So we're looking at getting that relief into the hospitality industry. And I think probably, I would assume Senator Sheldon probably touched on this, that the House and the Senate and the governor signed it last week. We did a spending plan that spends the COVID relief money that came from the federal government. I think there's some things we could have done better. But the important thing is that that's been signed into law. Those funds are going out there and should help provide some immediate positive impact to people. So I'll leave it with that, since I lost a chunk of my time there with the technology issues, and turn it back over to you. But I appreciate that opportunity and encourage anybody to certainly reach out to me, to my office, if there's specific needs we can help you with. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Drew.
There's a couple of specific questions that we have for you, Drew. One is if there's any conversations of extending the curbside alcohol orders past 2023.
Yeah, so actually I'm working heavily on that, because again, today is the cutoff, and I'm trying to get that moved out of appropriations today. We passed it out of Commerce and Gaming. So that flexibility that the Liquor and Cannabis Board gave to the hospitality industry during the pandemic, a lot of it actually contradicted current law, but they went ahead and did it, and I'm glad that they did. It was the right thing to do. So I'm trying to get that bill moved out of appropriations today, and hopefully we can, but the clock's ticking. And if we can't, I'll try some other maneuvers that I can also learn from Senator Sheldon's time in the legislature. There are some last minute tricks you can do, but hopefully we can get that out of appropriations today. So that is being worked on.
Good. Are there any other projects or sponsored bills that you're working on that you'd like to touch on?
I'll touch on the transportation and capital budgets. On transportation, we're working to get the latecomers fee removed at the State Patrol Academy, which has hindered development out there because of the costly hookup fees that any further development would have. So we're working on that. I appreciate Senator Sheldon's help there. And then I'm also working on a significant change to the Gorse interchange. This involves national security. We're trying to tie in some federal dollars. That's a $500 million project, probably one of the biggest that I've ever worked on. Trying to get that accomplished. That has a bottleneck that affects North Mason significantly. So hopefully that we can get that one through. And then on the capital budget side, I've sponsored a number of requests. We're gonna have to comb through them and see what's gonna make the most sense with the available dollars that are out there. And so that all those requests were finalized on Friday. So we'll be doing some work there. One of them I just point out is the youth center that is in downtown Shelton. They're looking for some funds to buy the building to make it better. That facility helps homeless high schoolers and junior hires with basic necessities and a place to get to. So that's one of the projects that I think is near and dear and is a need in the community. But we have a number of other capital budget projects that are out there as well, and we'll be going through those over the next week now that we have them all submitted.
Good, thank you. I know that you're very short on time and you've got to get back to the floor. Just one last question, and that talks a little bit about affordable housing in Mason County. Wondering what your thoughts are on some of the current or future opportunities. And then I know that Tim has been really active when it comes to the Veterans Village, but to touch on the current status there.
Yeah, the Veterans Village, I know that's been Senator Sheldon's one of his main projects, and I had a meeting with them before session started with a number of local stakeholders, trying to get the log jam jammed and get that project moving. I don't have a further update on it. There were some suggestions made to the organizers as to what needed to happen to help them get that moving forward. I think one of the biggest things that we can do for affordable housing, frankly, is get out of our own way. And when I say we, I'm talking about the government. We continue to pass things that cost more money, that cost more regulation, that cost more time, and turn around and wonder why housing is not affordable. Most recently, the new energy code went into effect on February 1st. That adds, on average, to a single-family home, $40,000 in additional cost. The Building Code Council had gotten it deferred last year. It was supposed to go into effect, got it deferred to February, and then in January passed it to be deferred until July. And the governor overrode them, and that's very unfortunate because we're seeing the lack of supply that's out there to even meet that code. And again, then we turn around and wonder why housing's not affordable. We've got to get out of our own way, and that's the biggest thing we can do. We've got to reform GMA and look at the urban growth boundaries for areas. And this pandemic has shown, and I think what we're going to see is a continuation of people, by and large, working from home more often than not. And so you're seeing a flight from the urban areas, and that's coming our way. So we've got to, and what's going to happen is the existing inventory that's there is going to get bought up, and it's going to drive prices up. And if we're not bringing in new inventory, the economics 101 says it won't work. So we've got to address that issue, and I would hope that the legislature would move a little quicker in that direction to get some relief there.
Very good. Thank you, Representative. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I'm going to drop off. I've got to go back into appropriations, but thank you again for the opportunity to address everybody.
It's our pleasure. Have a good one.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, last but certainly not least, I am happy to introduce Representative Dan Griffey. Representative Griffey began his career of service as a volunteer firefighter at 16 and continues now professionally as a lieutenant firefighter. Dan has been married to his wife, Dinah, for more than 20 years. The Griffeys have 3 daughters and 2 grandchildren. You can find them volunteering in the community, digging up clams, hiking the forest trails, and cheering on the Seahawks. Dan is a lieutenant career firefighter at Mason County Fire District 5. He holds a Class A CDL license and has graduated from North Bend Fire Academy. Has his fire officer certification and continuing education in the fire service, a 2-year certification in industrial electronics, and is a mechanic. So with no further ado, Representative Griffey.
Thank you so much, Heidi. I got to update that bio. Today is my wife and I's 30th year anniversary of meeting. We met 30 years ago today, and then a year and a half later we were married. So yes, we definitely have to update that bio.
Congratulations.
And I have 5 grandchildren now, and so many other things. But this isn't the time to do that, and I'll get you that information. My name is Dan Griffey. I have served the 35th district going on my 7th year now. I am a professional firefighter, and I have spent my entire professional service in Mason County. So it is my pleasure to continue that service in a different level in Olympia. It's hard to go last because my colleagues talk about all the things that are going on Olympia, and I agree with what's going on. I agree with them on the problems. Because I'm on the Public Safety Committee, I am working on a specialized set of reforms that are quite problematic in their implementation in Washington State, and that's law enforcement reform. We've seen and had to do some of the hardest fights that I've ever had in Olympia has been this year on just getting people to listen to both sides. I think a couple years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we had this great chamber did a after session report from us. And I said, one of the things that really has injured the legislature is toxic division. Well, at this point in time, the division is so toxic that just 3 of my legislators, 3 of my colleagues said something in a question, and they had ethics charges brought up against them. So just get this, in Olympia, we're asking hard questions, and we want to perfect bills to make those bills good for all Washingtonians, but their questions that they asked, an external group brought up ethics charges against them. So that's very disappointing. But even faced with all of the toxic division, I've been able to work really hard to change their narrative, and that it seemed to have been that all law enforcement is bad and that all law enforcement practices in Washington State are bad. But I have to point out and bring up to everybody's, just to re-emphasize this, is Initiative 940 significantly changed policing in Washington State. And most of those policies, that was the elimination of malice in the charging decisions when deadly force is being used by our law enforcement officers. We haven't even got all of those educational opportunities off the ground and all of those policies implemented. And we're talking about fundamentally changing law enforcement. Some of just a sneak preview of what they're trying to do is elimination of off-leash patrol officer dogs. Why that's so bad is it's a less lethal tactic that our law enforcement officers can use. It's a quicker tactic, and I can say that it's probably saved my life twice as a professional firefighter when somebody had a knife that nobody noticed in the beginning, and the officer was able to release the canine officer to take that out. That was many years ago, but canine officers are a valued resource that our law enforcement has and use and deploy. But further than that, law enforcement decertification, there's a whole new citizens board being conceived that specifically prohibits anybody on that board from having any law enforcement experience. I think that's pretty troublesome because having a great understanding of the tactics and reasons behind those tactics being deployed are going to be necessary for us to have a fair and balanced system. We all agree that there should be a decertification tool and technique, as I have. A Department of Health can, through complaint systems, my license or my certificate to provide emergency medical protection and services can be revoked through the Department of Health. So I believe our law enforcement officers need such a division or such a chapter, and it needs to be more robust with some more citizen input. But it can't only have people that have never had any law enforcement experience or ideas when it comes to that. So we're pushing really hard on those, pushing back hard, I should say, to try to get a policy that works for all Washingtonians. And I could probably speak to you for another 4 hours about that, but I'll back off because everyone else is starting to look bored, it looks like.
Thank you for your work on that. It's been interesting, I think, as we've worked with different government agencies in the past, from updating code and making sure that builders are at the table, for instance, so that you can get some of that professional feedback and insight. So I applaud your work on that. Can you comment a little bit on the question that we had about affordable housing in Mason County? So we've talked a little bit about the latecomers agreement and the transportation budget, but what are some of the current or future opportunities that you think can take place to make housing more affordable?
Well, and yes, I have to say, I am also a co-signer of that latecomer agreement. It would help with this housing and affordability piece, and I'll bring up why. We have an inventory issue that we have in Mason County and the 35th district as a whole. The GMA has artificially pushed us into a box. We've had to organize into urban growth areas or urban growth boundaries, or those boundaries that could expand. The reason a latecomer agreement is so important is that allows us to have some industrial, commercial, and residential opportunities further out to grow. But if we don't change the GMA, which I've been trying and working really hard to change, we're going to continue. The premise behind it is encouraging urban growth, urban and suburban growth, and restricting rural growth. And I tell everybody that our policies that we have in Olympia right now, as far as housing affordability, envisions building affordable housing on the most expensive land that we have in the state of Washington, which is King County and downtown Seattle and those sort of places. We can no longer have depend on policies for affordable housing unless we talk about intrinsically affordable housing, meaning smaller lot sizes, smaller house sizes. I'm a big fan in the tiny homes arena. I think there's much more we can do, and I keep working every year to do that. But LAMERS, it's another acronym, basically ability for the rural community to develop the inventory that maybe the suburbs need as far as housing and commercial growth. But to echo what Drew said, all of our policies that we're writing now to protect tenants further imbalance the landlord side. And when the landlords are so out of balance, where there's not a kind of an equilibrium, we're seeing that those people that provide and own affordable housing are moving out of that because of the record land prices that we have right now. And so we got to continue to have and support policies that are balanced, that are predictable in the future, so our businesses have a good reason to invest in affordable housing. So long-term predictable regulatory climate and balancing out the landlord-tenant laws, I think will get us a long ways to affordability in our housing.
Can you share with us just some of the trends that you're seeing that are happening this session, and maybe comment on some of your anticipated outcomes?
Well, like I said, a very disappointing trend is both sides not listen to one another. I have done everything, and I still do everything I possibly can to build relationships, because I still think this business, even though it doesn't feel like relationships are helping that much, relationships are everything in Olympia. And so I'm doing everything I can to nurture the relationships that I have with people on the other side. And I think that is why we're making some significant progress on the law and justice reform, that a more balanced approach I think will be had, where we'll bring law enforcement to the table. But the toxic division we feel in Olympia isn't just Olympia. How many of you on social media have a good friend that now won't talk to you because of something you said and offense has been taken? we can no longer allow ourselves to be like that. We have to embrace others' ideas. We can't get mad at their idea. What we have to do is say, oh my goodness, how did you come up with that opinion? And then we have to expect that somebody will listen to us. We can change someone's opinion 30%, and then they change their opinion 30% by talking to us, and we perfect this great republic. We've got to get back to us talking to one another. The toxic division we feel in Olympia is just a symptom of a societal problem we've allowed ourselves through social media and those other kind of avenues to get into. And we all as leaders have to reject it and demand that people start talking to each other and listening to one another again.
So there's a question here about, it says clear cutting. I don't know if that's what it is or if it's the working forests around Union, and that the current cutting is beginning and will continue for 2 years around Alderbrook Resort. The question is, considering historic fires and the state's focus on climate change, would any of our lawmakers, meaning you guys, support a moratorium on cutting until the forests can recover?
So no, I don't support not cutting the trees down, and here's why. A significant study, a scientific study was done about carbon sequestration and carbon sinkability of our Doug firs, Western red cedar, and our major economic drivers in the timber industry. And we found out, and we knew for a long time, but this study proved that timber at a certain age, especially the Doug fir, stops sequestering or absorbing carbon. It's just like a baby human, where they're going to very tiny, eat a lot of calories and grow big and strong like their parents, and their parents actually stop growing at a certain age, time. If we did that, we would further injure the environment by allowing way more free carbon to be in the environment, and we would further stop programs that put people to work, that complete the carbon sequestration cycle that we have. And that means you need to lock that carbon into a substrate, then you mill that substrate into something that then could be permanently used for housing and that sort of thing. So no, I think it's a bad idea to go backwards in our policy. As a matter of fact, if we really want to protect our forests, we need to understand that treatment and replanting is going to be the thing that sets us free and continues our carbon sink initiative that we have in Washington State. Thank you, Heidi.
Heidi, I was going to make a comment about that. My dad was involved in the timber industry and my grandfather for years, but my dad always said, don't refer to it as a clear cut, Tim, it's a sun meadow. And Douglas fir grows best when it has sunlight. And I know there's visually going up the truck trail right now, there's quite a bit of sun meadows that are visible. But today in our Department of Natural Resource regulations, those types of even age harvest, we'll call it, even age harvest cannot be done over a certain acreage. I think it's about 100 acres until the adjacent property has a grow up period. And usually that's at least 5 or 6 years to start the seedling. So while it might visually look quite different right now, I assure you it's going to grow back very fast. But if I could, I'd make one comment, kind of a local issue. Of course, the Veterans Village, we're working very hard with to rebuild the Mason County Housing Authority, and also to work with the Kitsap County Housing Authority on the vouchers that are needed for operating expenses. I've got a budget proviso that I'd like to see the legislature pass this year that would give some operating dollars to those projects, and we'll see if that helps. But also on affordable housing, I've had several calls, and Representative Griffey, you probably have too, about the proposed development around Shelton. The national company apparently that would provide over 100 homes. I think they're pre-manufactured homes as I understand it. And also they would be all rentals. And while Shelton as a city has a lot of rentals, I don't know that a project that provides exclusively rentals would be the best way to go. And certainly I'm not a city commissioner and don't have a say in this project, but a lot of people have called me anyway and expressed their concern. And what we have seen, I think that's been more successful has been mixed use, a variety of rentals, condominiums, single family homes that are owned by the individual, and perhaps some commercial as well. So that's my comment on that. And I don't know, Dan, if you had comments about that project, people calling you about it.
Oh, yeah, we're looking into it. Yes, thanks, Tim.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both for that. I'm not seeing any other questions that anybody has at the moment. So it looks like we might be able to let you guys off the hook a little bit earlier than we had planned. I do want to express again our appreciation for you guys giving up the beginning of your week and your continued support of Mason County and our business community.
Thanks, Heidi, all together.
Thanks, everyone.
But we appreciate their time this morning. And again, I want to say it's been a pleasure to co-host with Heidi and the Shelton-Mason County Chamber to present this today. And we wish you a great rest of your week.
Yep, thank you, everyone.